Greetings, my friends, and welcome back. It has been a while since our last story. Well, it is quite easy to get lost in the woods, especially if they are in the inner worlds that occupy one's mind. But I'm back now, and I have a story that is very popular for this time of year. Speaking of this time of year, it's a bit chilly. What do you say we take this somewhere a bit more comfortable and warmer, let's say? So, welcome to this humble abode that I have. Better than the forest, especially on a cold winter's night. This story I'm about to tell is a story that has been told around this time of year, around campfires, around many warm courts, especially in England. And the story I'm about to tell you is the story of Gawain, Sir Gawain, and the Green Knight. Our story takes place at the time of the winter solstice, what we call Christmas today. And it was Christmas in Camelot. Camelot, the great seat of the greatest king that the island of Britain has ever known, King Arthur Pendragon and his knights of the Round Table. And they had just been feasting for a couple of days leading up to the end of the year. And whenever is there a more greater feast than at Camelot, with great amounts of food, lots of wine flowing, and many merry times to be had. And they were just about to sit down again for one more before the new year. Everything was all prepared, and they were just about to begin, until there was a knock. 3 knocks, in fact, upon the great big oak door to which the round table was situated. And then suddenly the door burst open to reveal a figure upon a horse. A great big horse, and a great big mountain of a man sitting upon that horse. He held a giant green axe in one hand and a bough of holly in the other, an ancient symbol of peace. And when they noticed this figure, they also noticed something very different. Something wasn't quite right. For one, his horse was green. His fur was green. Its mane was a dark green colour, all covered in moss and bits of branches sticking out of it. And then they looked at the rider. His clothes were green. His armour, his cloak was green. He had a giant green helm, and when he took off that green helm, green skin, matted green beard, matted long green hair with the same amount of attributes sticking out of it, the same as the mane of his horse. They were all green. This emerald emissary, this green knight, cantered in towards the round table. And he held up his branch of holly, and he addressed the entire court. I have come in peace, warriors of the Great Bear, but I also come bearing a challenge, and he threw his branch of holly that landed upon the round table. All of the other knights reached for their swords. But then King Arthur himself raised a hand to stay them. And there was many murmurings across the entirety of the table. A challenge, they said. A Christmas game. Laughed the Green Knight. I will lend whoever accepts this challenge my axe. And you will strike a blow at me. Strike as hard as you like. I can take it. But in return, I will deal the same blow to whoever accepts this challenge within a year and a day at my home, the Green Chapel. And the blow that'll be struck will be of equal value to the one you have dealt to me. So, which one of you brave warriors is made of stern stuff? Which one of you accepts my game? The laugh rang out through the great hall. Many of the knights looked at themselves with contemplation. Did they really have the stuff to fight something which, to many, clearly looked like it came from another realm entirely? I don't think I would have. The things are too stacked against me. But King Arthur, not willing to let the honour of his knights be so discouraged by this stranger, was about to step forward and accept the challenge until someone stood in front and accepted in his place. His nephew, young Gawain. Gawain wasn't a knight at this stage, and he thought by accepting this challenge, he would have earned some favour with the other knights, maybe prove himself that he was worthy to be among them at the table. I will accept your game for the honour of my king, said Gawain. King Arthur looked at him, nodded, and sat back down. Many in that hall sighed a great sigh of relief. Gawain approached the Green Knight. His axe was handed to him. Gawain held it in his hand, quite lofty, quite burdensome. But it was wieldable, serviceable, to say the least. And the Green Knight got off his horse and held out his arms aloft with his head pointing upwards, waiting for the blow to be struck. So Gawain took the axe in his hand, prepared for a mighty swing, and with one great fell swoop, the axe came across the neck of the Green Knight, decapitating him. His head fell off his shoulders and bumped down the stone steps leading up to the round table. Blood was everywhere, and everyone stared in disbelief. But there was a little sound coming from the head. It almost sounded like laughter. The body moved by itself, picked up the head of the Green Knight, his eyes opened and burning hot, glanced at everyone in the hall, and then gazed at Gawain himself. Well played, little hawk of May. I will see you within a year and a day, little one. Where I will deal the same blow you've dealt me. Make sure you keep your promise. And with that, the Green Knight mounted the horse, took the axe from Gawain, and he rode off, out of the hall, out of the citadel of Camelot, out into the great wilderness that laid beyond, head ever laughing, and the echoes can be heard until they fell silent. And there was much celebration, especially towards young Gawain, who did prove to be brave, but there were many there who also thought him very foolish. Because remember, the deal was that the same blow that you dealt to the Green Knight will be dealt to you. And Gawain removed his head. No mortal man can survive having his head cut off. But at the moment, this didn't bother Gawain in the slightest. And the seasons continued as they did all the years before. Winter died down and became spring. Then spring transformed into summer, and that was Gawain's highlight. Being called Gwalach Mai in the old tongue, the Hawk of May, he drank in that summer, and it was the best that he ever experienced. But summer comes to an end, and as autumn trailed on, he felt the nagging feeling in the back of his mind. You must keep your vow, Gawain. You must keep your oath. And he felt that it was time to keep his promise with the Green Knight and to seek out his home, the Green Chapel. And by the time that Samhain had ended, and it was just coming in to the winter time, Gawain prepared for his quest. He was given new clothing, he was given new armour, he was given a new cloak. Whether it was gifted by the knights or whether it was just gifted to him by Arthur himself, he was prepared to set out as any of the other knights had done before him. And with these new gifts in hand, he set off on his quest to find the Green Chapel. And many he asked said to go north in order to find it. And so Gawain did. He went north. He went north, and the further north he got, time passed and winter began to take its toll on the land. The nights were longer, the ground ever colder, the wind ever sharper, and the icy fingers spread throughout the land until reached ever northwards and encompassed the land in a cold darkness that was very customary of the winter season. The time was getting closer for Gawain, and he had camped on many sides of many trodden pathways, deep into forests. He crossed over bogs, he crossed over rolling hills and treacherous pieces of woodland, always asking for a sign, something to know to his mind that he was getting closer to completing his quest. And on one day, as he had finished camp and was travelling further northward, he encountered, whilst walking through a wood, a great fortress with great wooden palisades great feasting halls. Oh, it was impressive. Nothing compared to Camelot by any means, but it nevertheless was very impressive. And he also met the lord of this fortress. His name was Bertilac. And seeing that Gawain was a weary traveller, Bertilac invited Gawain into his home to feast with him that night. And, oh, what a feast it was! Lots of food, lots of drink. Very much what he was accustomed to in Camelot. And joining Bertilac in the conversation was his very fair and very beautiful wife. She was very versed in conversation. She was a delight to talk to. And her beauty was also something of a vocal point. But that was always a given. There were many servants that waited on them hand and foot. Oh, it was a great evening. But Gawain also noticed in the corner of the room there was an old woman. It's an old hag just watching the room and the gatherings going on with her beady eyes just swaying this way and that, looking at Gawain sometimes, but always just looking around. Gawain thought it was a bit strange, but he didn't press. He was too busy enjoying himself. And the carousing kept going late into the night. To one point, Bertilac and Gawain were by themselves, enjoying good conversation and having a little bit of a last tuple, as you do. A little nightcap was always very nice. Gawain explained that he was on a quest to find the Green Knight at his home, the Green Chapel. And Bertilac was taken aback. "You're after the Green Chapel? Well, it just so happens the Green Chapel is a very strange place, it is. But it's over there, just a few miles that way. It will take about a day or two's ride to get there. I'll tell you what, why don't you stay with me for the few days leading up to when you have to go? Whatever I have is yours. And you can make your appointment. In fact, how about this? How about a little game? I think you might like it. I will go off hunting for the 3 days that you are staying here with me. And whatever I hunt, it's yours. I will provide whatever game that I get. I'll gift it to you, and depending on how big the game is, you can keep some of it back for the knights at Camelot. It would be my honour, young Gawain. But in return, anything you find, you will give to me. Anything you find around my home, you will give it to me in return. What do you say? Does that sound fair?" Gawain agreed. Yes, it did seem quite fair. And it was a bit jovial, but oh well, it was like a gentleman's wager. They shook hands on it, they drank with each other about it, and then they retired for the night. And in the morning, Gawain was awoken by the sound of hunting horns, of dogs, of horses, and of men shouting and talking to each other. It was, of course, Bertilac setting off for the first hunt of their gentleman's wager. And after Gawain had just, rubbed off the stuff from his eyes and, got himself a little bit more aware of his surroundings, he could see to the entrance of his chambers Bertilac's wife. She was very scantily dressed. She approached Gawain, and she got ever closer, and tried to seduce him. Well, many could not really withstand her. She was very beautiful and very enticing as well. But Gawain refused her advances. This is because he kept to very stern principles set forth by his uncle, King Arthur, and he told it to all of his knights to never break the oaths of hospitality. And let's face it, sleeping with someone's wife is definitely breaking the rules of hospitality, if ever I've heard one. He also felt it quite closely to honour these, as it was the sign of him being a knight, even though he wasn't one just yet. He felt like he had to keep that close to himself. So every advance she would take, she said, "No, I'm not going to do it. I will not betray my host like that, and I will not betray you like that. It is very unfair of me, and it is quite unfair on you as well." Bertilac's wife was taken aback, thinking, surely this is the Gawain that I have heard was quite a friend to women, but I know when to stop. So she gave a chaste kiss on his cheek before she went away to her own business. And come the afternoon, the hounds and the horses was heard, and Gawain went out to see that Bertilac had returned. Now the game he had caught that day was a huge, great big stag, a great big red deer stag. Oh, it was a glorious thing with huge antlers. Bertilac said, "I caught this easy. It was just standing there, but I brought it down, and it is my gift to you, young Gawain. So, what have you got for me?" And Gawain, a little bit embarrassed, went up to Bertilac and gave him a kiss on his cheek, in his great big bristly cheek. They kind of looked at each other for a few minutes in awkward silence, but then both the men broke out into laughter, thinking about how jovial, how funny that was. I'm not going to ask where you got it from. Ha ha! And they had venison that night. It was very nice. Very, 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 very nice. And they retired that night in good spirits.
Gawain awoke to the sound of hounds and horns, horses and men. Bertilac was off on his hunt once again. And once again, Bertilac's wife approached Gawain in his chambers, being a little bit more seductive than last time, turning it up to a little bit more, seeing if this time she could win him over. But Gawain still refused. Politely, but he refused. She was still very vexed by this. But she also realised he just stood down and parted him again with a chaste kiss on the cheek, and also one just in the corner of his lips. And then she went about her business. And so did Gawain. Until it was about late afternoon, when Bertilac returns from his hunt. And what does he bring? He doesn't bring a deer this time. Oh no. He brings a gigantic wild boar, this huge burly animal with huge bristles across its back, massive tusks that could gore a man to death if they charged at them. Looks like that him and Bertilac definitely put up quite of a fight with each other. So, what have you got for me, Gawain? Gawain, once again a little bit embarrassed, placed a kiss on his cheek, but also in the corner of his mouth. And here. And both the gentlemen looked at each other awkwardly again, and then suddenly just started bursting into laughter. They all found it quite droll. Once again, I won't ask where you got it from. And they had great feast. They made quite a good use of that boar, and still had some left over, so that Gawain can add it to his portion of the venison, and they retired for the night. And it was the third day, the third time that Bertilac got up with his hunting party, horn blazing, and off he rode for his third hunt. The last day of their gentleman's wager. And once again, Bertilac's wife was in Gawain's chambers. And this time, she was as direct as you can possibly get, while still retaining some dignity. She laid it out plainly. I mean, Gawain already knew what she wanted, but this time, no. Literally pulling him in, saying, I want you, Gawain. Will you have me? No, my lady, said Gawain, I will not. And you know this. Fine. If you won't have me physically, take something, a token, if you will, something that is mine. What about the ring on my finger? Are you joking? Said Gawain. I will not take your wedding band. He's gonna kill me before the Green Knight does if he sees me with your wedding band. No. Then there must be something. What about this? And Bertilac's wife reached into the folds of her gown and pulls out a length of material. It was a green and gold brocaded silk, and it formed this sort of like belt or garter that she had upon her person. She folded it up into a nice little package and said, take this. It is an enchanted piece of cloth. If you take this and you wear it when you visit the Green Knight, it will protect you from whatever challenges he will throw at you. I can't take that, surely. Are you sure it will do that? I promise. But if you take it, you must keep it a secret. You must not give it to my husband when he comes back. You're asking me to break a gentleman's oath just to keep you safe. Well, Gawain was in a bit of a predicament. But in the end, he agreed. Probably out of, I wouldn't say fear, he wasn't scared to go and face the Green Knight. I mean, he's been on this quest, wanting to keep his promise. But this little thing inside of him thought, well, a little bit of added protection isn't going to harm, is it? I mean, I'm against a being from another realm. What else am I supposed to do? A mere mortal. What am I supposed to do? So he took the band, took the material. He tied it around his waist like a belt or like a sash and hid it under his clothes. And Bertilac's wife gave him one kiss on the cheek, one on the corner, one on the other cheek, and one, just a small peck, on the lips. And then she departed the chambers and went about her day, leaving Gawain feeling ashamed or just confused. This probably be the best way I could describe that. Then Bertilac returned from his hunt. The man himself looked a bit downhearted himself. He basically threw this small animal onto this large table they had in their hall, and to go in it like a fox. It was just a mangy fox that he found. I don't mean to be impertinent. It was the only thing I could find. Oh, no, it's all right, said Gawain. So, what have you got? And Gawain, a bit more confidently this time, one kiss on the cheek, one kiss on the other, and a little peck on Bertilac's lips. Bertilac cocked an eyebrow, though. I think he sensed that wasn't everything. Is that all? Yes, that's everything, said Gawain. Very well. And then they had their feast of fox. It probably wasn't the best meal, not whatsoever. And conversation was also very restricted, I would say. There was a sort of an air about the hall. No one could really pinpoint it. But remember that old woman I spoke of before when Gawain first arrived at the hall? She just kept staring at Gawain. Before, she was just glancing around the room, checking everybody. But she just looked directly at Gawain, not blinking. That really concerned him. That made him feel very uneasy. So much so that he had to break company early so that he could get to sleep and, well, make for his appointment. Well, it was the day. Gawain packed up his things, packed up the bits of meat that was saved from the previous days, and keeping the sash hidden. He bid farewell to both his hosts, and on his horse went off further north, as given by the instructions of Lord Bertilac. And the further he rode, the colder it would get, and more dangerous the weather would become, until he came to a gigantic mound. So, even though it's called the Green Chapel, it's not a chapel in a traditional Christian sense. It is a big mound, but it has a cave entrance in the front, surrounded by bramble, surrounded by trees. And Gawain, he got off his horse and he stepped through, getting darker and darker the further he went in, ever darker and darker, until finally it opened up into a large, spacious area with many fire lanterns opening up and lighting up in different directions. And being accustomed to the light, he could see these huge earth pillars reaching up into the roof of this mound. It looked like to be earth and clay all mixed in together to create these huge structures. And he also noticed two other shapes. Right in front of him, it looked like an altar of some kind, but then he was also reminded that it almost looked like a chopping block made out of a stump. And he looked up a bit more, and he saw what looked like to be a throne of some description. A throne made of wood and earth, covered in ivy and bits of holly, and it looks like bits of yew branches sticking out of it. Or was that just the person he saw sat in that chair, asleep? He had found it, and sat in front of him in that great earthen wooden throne was the Green Knight himself, fast asleep. And you could hear these little droplets, probably from the moisture up in the roof part of the mound, was tip-tapping on the floor below. And then suddenly, after the third drop, the Green Knight's eyes shot open. He took one big breath. And he got up, creaking as he stretched his limbs, and you could hear it all creaking like you hear when a tree is just under pressure and its limbs are starting to creak and crack with movement from the wind. And he turned his head and adjusted himself to the room, and he saw Gawain in front of him. "You came. I was not expecting you to keep your bargain. I have come to honour your promise, O Green Knight," said Gawain. "Well then, let us finish our game, little hawk." And as he was getting up out of his throne, he picked up his green battle axe, hoisted it on his shoulder, and took big steps down towards the altar chopping block that was in front of him. "Kneel, and we shall finish our game." Gawain was a little bit shaken, but he had courage. So he knelt down, pulled his hair aside so his neck was visible, and he put his head down. Hearing him breathe reverberated into that grand chamber. the Green Knight lifted up the axe, and he was just about to bring it down until suddenly Gawain kind of flinched a little bit in fear. The Green Knight looked in surprise. "Sir, you flinch. Did I flinch when you cut off my head?" "Well, forgive me," said Gawain, "but I don't have your courage, let alone your ability to keep my head alive even when it's been removed from my shoulders." "You've had an entire year to gain whatever courage you can muster in that heart of yours." "Yes, and I will still be a mortal person because of it. I apologise, just give me a moment," said Gawain. "Very well." So Gawain collected himself, did a few more breaths, and put his head down. "Okay." The Green Knight brought his axe again. He took a big swing, and as he brought the axe down, it stopped just as it was about to touch his neck, and he pulled back. And Gawain kind of side-eyed up in confusion at the Green Knight. "Just making sure you're not flinching again. Right. This is the one. Third time lucky." And the Green Knight brought up the axe one last time. And when he brought it down, he once again stopped just at his neck and made a small cut to the nape of his neck and drew 3 drops of blood. "I'm satisfied. The game is over." And he put down his axe. And Gawain sat up, amazed that he was still able to keep his head intact and he hasn't died. But then confusion once again came upon him. If you were not going to take my head, then what was the point in all of this? Who knows? I would have taken your head. But a lesson had to be made. Yes, you've kept your promise to come here. But you kept the sash my wife gave you and kept it from me. So you broke your oath to me once. Who's to say you would ever do it again? Your wife? Then Gawain kind of pieced it together. Bertilac had almost the same mannerisms and the same speech patterns as the Green Knight. And just to confirm his theory, the Green Knight's face shape-shifted into Bertilac's, and then it kind of formed back into his green wooden form, his greenish form. Little, no, warrior, heed this lesson. Yes, you didn't reveal the sash that you hid, though I believe my wife gave it to you out of her own fear for your life, which I cannot fault her for. But you still were not honest. Even if you were virtuous, it still doesn't change the fact But that is to be expected. You're only mortal. Even with a heart as big as yours. So, heed my wisdom. As long as you are honest to those around you, and honest to yourself, you will do great things. But remember, you can't always keep promises you can't keep. So just be careful. And we part as good friends. Now be off with you. The lesson has been learned. And I fear I must sleep until I am next summoned.
And he walked back up into his chair.
Gave a big sigh.
And fell asleep, motionless. Gawain crawled his way back up out of the Green Chapel. He was feeling a bit ashamed of himself. But he also took what the Green Knight said to heart. And he returned to Camelot a changed man. And everyone else thought so too when they saw him. They thought, wow, he managed to survive against that monster? He must be worthy. But then Gawain also returned, not only with the meat that was gifted to him by Bertilac, also known as the Green Knight, but with a story to tell, and a lesson well learned, well drilled into his mind. Gawain was made a knight in the end. He wore that green sash with him always, as a gentle reminder to uphold what the Green Knight had told him, and to always keep his word, and to be honourable and honest, but also practical, and to not go making foolish, outlandish promises that he can't cash in if he doesn't understand the full picture. But I think that can be said for everyone. And so, that was the tale of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, a lovely tale from the Arthurian style of folklore. Yeah, it's always a nice time. I must also apologise if I sounded very different whilst reading through the story. Whilst I was going through it, winter's unfortunate coldness and influence came over me, and I ended up developing the flu and a bit of a chest infection. So if I do sound a bit different, that is probably why. I hope that all of my friends enjoy this new format I'm trying. And I hope to see you again very soon. Stay safe, my friends. And happy Solstice. Happy Yuletide. Merry Christmas. And have a good new year.